for episode 100, I couldn't have thought of a better guest than Carye and Jason Bye, who are the official ambassadors to the Barney Smith Toilet Seat Museum. Once the internet got really big, when people were able to Google themselves, I would always kind of decide to Google myself once in a while and find out where I'm at. And there was always this one Barney Smith who was way more famous than I am. He created toilet seat art, and I had the opportunity to meet him back in 2017 when I was at a conference in San Antonio, Texas. And I ended up having a great time. I spent hours going to his toilet seat museum, seeing all of that, and had a great time. I ended up actually painting a toilet seat art for him that he then submitted into his art museum, which was out of his garage, mind you. So when episode 100 was starting to come around, I had to jump at the chance to grab Carye and Jason Bye to sit down and talk to them about Barney Smith. And unfortunately, he passed away a couple years ago. But I hope you enjoy episode 100 of Storycomic Presents. I had a fantastic time talking to them. Welcome to Storycomic Presents, where we interview amazing storytellers and artists. This is episode 100. I am your host, Barney Smith of Storycomic.com, and I'm honored to have with us the official ambassadors to the Barney Smith Toilet Seat Art Museum, Carye and Jason Bye. Carye and Jason,
hi.
Thank you. Hi. I gotta say, I am excited to talk to both of you, and we've talked like through like texting, but never actually like voice to voice. And I wanted to make this like, this special episode. We both have a history with the Barney Smith of the Toilet Seat Art Museum. And I wanted to really kind of dedicate, an episode of just talking about the art and the man behind the art. And there's plenty of things. There's websites and stuff, and there's YouTube videos of interviews that he's done, but just wanting to talk to the people that you're his neighbors for many years. You helped him out for many years, and just really wanted to just chat with you both about just his art and his story and all these great inspirations that he's kind of given to a lot of people. So
thanks for having us. We pretty much were in Barney's life for the last 3 years of his life. So not many years, but we kind of caught the interesting transition of a lifelong artist in a quirky garage museum, right. And then having him give it up. He sold it, and it lives on today at the Colony truck yard, which is like a it's like a beer garden. It's got like an outdoor roadside. Have you been there yet?
No, I haven't.
It's really cool. We actually went to the museum opening, and Barney was there for that in 2019. And then when we don't live in Texas anymore, so we were living pretty close to Barney. He was in Alamo Heights, which is part of San Antonio. And we ended up stopping in the truck yard on our way moving to Pittsburgh. So we're in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania now. So right. we're no longer in San Antonio.
Okay. And how far away is the truck yard colony to San Antonio? Is it the original house of Barney Smith?
It's 5 hours.
Yeah, 5 hours driving.
Okay.
So the art is no longer in San Antonio, which was disappointing at first, but the whole collection got saved together And the new owners did a really great job making this wonderful legacy for him.
Yeah, I mean, in front of the building, they have toilets kind of stacked up as pillars. So it's very nice.
And then you go in the front door and there's the whole timeline of Barney's life. They made kind of framed pictures and all sorts of cool stuff. Yeah. They did a fantastic job. Yeah, there's the toilet seats.
There's the toilets. And there's, the little mural they did up on the ceiling is great. Barney laughed when he saw that.
Because the original museum was in his garage and it was all packed in there and there's no way you could see it all, you know. It was insane.
Right. And I know when I visited in 2017, it was in his garage, and there was not a lot of here's this from the Atlas Obscura. This is basically what it was. It was stacks upon stacks.
So he would usually just open one of the doors, but for special occasions, he would open both doors. And it's fun. It was fun to see different pictures of his museum through the years because, you know, at a time there wasn't very many, and then he keeps adding. And he would do is he would get those from the like the cemeteries where you hang like a flowers or a wreath for the departed.
Right.
He would use those to hang all his toilet seats. So like in that picture, there's like a little column of toilet seats, and those are all on those little bendy metal frames.
Right.
You know? And then if you looked up inside the museum, they're all hanging up there. It was pretty incredible.
And then he passed away in 2019, right?
He did.
Right. Okay.
It was actually like 1 month after the new museum opened. I mean, it couldn't have actually gone really better. His health was declining pretty fast. He was pretty wobbly. You know, the museum had closed. We had packed it all up, and it had gone, north. So the last few months until the museum opened, you know, he didn't have as much to do, but he still was trying to make art. Like he was literally still drawing and still fiddling and finding things to do. So he just was one of those people who just always were using their hands to create. And he was always thinking of ideas. Like it never stopped, like up until he passed away. But yeah, once the toilet seats museum was gone, he didn't have as strong of a, purpose.
Yeah.
Because he didn't have that. He loved to show visitors, and he no longer had people coming because it was gone, you know. So I wasn't surprised that he passed away soon after the museum left.
So talking about Carye and Jason, I think that if I recall correctly, the two of you were very much champions on trying to make sure there was a spot for his museum to go to. Remember in the group where it's like, you know, you're really trying to champion to make sure it stayed in San Antonio, and you're working with him. Talk to us a bit about that, how that transition happened, by the search for where his legacy was going to go.
Well, I mean, on my part, I didn't do a whole lot with it. Carye was definitely involved a lot more with that than me. But he had hoped that he could make some money off of it, and that was his thing, and he wanted it. At first, it was going to go to his birthplace of Eastland, Texas. But then
they weren't really offering him anything for it. It was like he put out the call, and people were interested, but nothing ever panned out because he didn't want to piecemeal it. He wanted all the seats to go together, and that's a lot to take on.
Right.
Like there's a bunch of museums that would take 6 or 10, but to take 1,400 seats, and some of them were in, not the best condition. They've been in a garage for like 25 years.
Right.
Right.
But he, when we got involved, we had just moved to San Antonio, and actually we met him in 2014. We had gotten married and did this big cross-country train trip around the circle around the country. And we stopped in San Antonio because Jason had a best friend living in Dallas, and San Antonio is on the train line. So we thought that's a great place to meet. And so whenever I travel, I don't know, I've always looked for a quirky museum to go to. And since the 1990s, I had actually collected a bunch of museum books, and Barney Smith's Toilet Seat Museum was in all those books. So it was on my radar, a decade before I saw it. So when we were coming to San Antonio, I was like, I'm going to see that Barney Smith Toilet Seat Museum. And I really thought it was out in the country. Like, this sounds like something on, and it's like and of course I'm like, it's Texas. It's a dusty road, and there's like tumbleweed going by. And no, San Antonio is like a luscious, there's rivers, and it's actually a humid place in the summer. Like, it's not that dry.
Right.
And the museum actually turns out it's in like a suburb, like a suburban garage. Like, it's not anything you would expect.
Right.
But so we went and saw it, and as we were talking earlier, it's like time stops still. He drags you go into his museum, and we were in there for all morning, and it was August, and it was hot, and we were sweating, but then he's like showing us something else and telling a story. And it's just, he's just an incredibly interesting person. Like, his art's cool, but like the Barney himself is just, you don't meet people like him very often. Like, he's a I don't know, just,
yeah.
We fell in love with Barney that day. And so literally, and so what happened is, so we visited in 2014 on our vacation.
Yeah.
And then, so believe it or not, I have the bathtub art museum. So, and it's more like a small time thing. Like, I collect postcards and little bathtubs. And so I'm like, Barney, you don't have a bathtub themed toilet seat. And so he's like, well, send me something. And so I sent him a little plastic bathtub and some pictures. And he actually so I called him one time, and I found out that he finished it. And so I got a picture. So we were in contact a little bit in between. But I think we ended up moving to San Antonio because he was so charming, and he was such a highlight of our tour. We're like, wow, maybe we should live in San Antonio. So I think there's lots of other reasons too, but he really just inspired us. And so we ended up actually moving to San Antonio in 2016. And if you want to tell the story, we ended up finding him again.
Yeah. We were walking around one day, just kind of exploring, and we happened upon his house, and the museum was open. And so we were like, well, let's go in and see it again. And so we walked in, and Barney was there, and he said, come on in.
And then he showed me the bathtub seat he made.
And then, we just hit it off. And it was Carrie who actually started doing more volunteer work with him. And
so around his, so we were moved there in April.
Yeah.
And then
his birthday was in May.
So his birthday's May the 25th.
Yeah.
And he just said, hey, like, I would call him like once a week, maybe, and then we'd just pop by and visit. And he's like, oh, do you want to come over for some cake and ice cream on my birthday, May the 25th? And I was like, sure. Well, it turns out he was having a street party. Another fan, there was like a whole street party, and the mayor of Alamo Heights declared it Barney Smith Day. So it wasn't just cake and ice cream. It was like a major party. All his family was there. And it really was, I think he said out loud to somebody like, oh, I could use some help doing this. And I was like, me. I want to be your helper. And so then I started going there once a week.
Yeah. And then she was telling me that, Barney would actually be out there at,
he was
94, 90.
He was 90.
95. Well, he just turned 95.
He just turned 95.
Yeah. So he was out there mowing the yard
at 95.
And I was like, oh, let me come over and help him. So I went over one day and just said, oh, I can help you with yard work. Just let me know what you want done. And so I became his gardener, basically.
The museum
museum
groundskeeper.
Museum groundskeeper, yes. And
Yep.
Yeah, and Barney would come out and tell me how to do it. And if I forgot my hat in this picture that you're showing there, he actually said, oh, you should wear one of my hats. So I'm wearing one of Barney's hats. And yeah, but I just did that, and I loved helping him out. I learned so much from him. Not only did he do art, but he was, a master plumber. He was an electrician. He did it all. So he would like show me stuff on how to do it, and he'd explain to me like, okay, so we're going to take apart the electric lawnmower, and then we're going to put it back together because the thing inside, and I don't know all the technical terms to it still, but the thing that would spin inside to get the motor going would actually, one of the pieces had become disconnected. So we had to like rewire it back together. And we did that, and it worked. That was the thing about Barney is, he was so knowledgeable and just everything.
And he loved to teach and show people, and
Yeah.
Sometimes it was hard because no one did it as well as he did.
Yeah.
And it was hard because, with his age, he was getting, more wobbly in his fingers. It was harder for him to do. But still, my first time volunteering, he wanted to cut a board. And I was like, oh, I don't really feel comfortable cutting boards with just one of those free saws. And I was kind of, but he actually cut a perfect line. Like he did. I was like, it was uncomfortable at times because I was always afraid something would go wrong because he was so old. But what I learned is he had so much experience and time doing stuff. And that's the thing when you work with older craftspeople or people who know a lot, they can actually still do a lot up into their 90s. And you just have to kind of stand back and, be there to help if they need or ask, but they can actually do a lot. And so I think that's why Jason and I especially formed a good kinship with him is we were just kind of there to learn from him and not tell him what to do, and a lot of people want to tell older people what to do, but Barney, it was the Barney show.
Yeah.
Definitely. And he was just such a sweetheart. He would at times he would just say the funniest things, and then he would feed us cookies name it. That was like his
Yeah. That and his Neapolitan ice cream.
Oh, he loved his ice cream. Big sweet tooth, and so after a hard, sweaty day out helping him with the museum, he'd go inside, sit in his chair, and then he'd tell us to go into the kitchen and get a cookie, and then a cookie for a couple for him as well.
And you said that he had 1,400 seats?
Yeah. So at the end, he had about 1,400 exhibits. So all his toilet seats he numbered, and he kept record books. He loved record books. He kept wrote them all down. He also had sign-in sheets, so everybody who visited the museum had to sign in and tell you where they were from, and you also got to sign a toilet seat. And then they would write which toilet
what
seat.
State it was, a state, whatever state you were from.
Yeah, he really liked records and kept a bunch of different kinds,
Right.
Everybody who visited.
Yep.
Yeah.
And actually those binders of all visitors are in the colony now. In their lobby. We sent that to them, so they have that now.
Okay. And do you have so if I'm trying to remember the story correctly that he told me, it was like the initial reason he started doing this is his father had some like antlers on a board, and he wanted to find something similar, and he grabbed the toilet seat. Do you remember how what the origin story of the toilet seat art?
Yeah, so he had what he called small beginnings. Is that correct?
Was his first toilet seat?
Yeah, it was his toilet seat, and that he put little antlers on it. And his father said, "Oh, well, that looks good," and so he just did that, and then he went on from there. He did some dogs and dog tags.
He put like pelts from hunting on them too. I mean,
but
in Barney's viewpoint, why cut out a piece of wood when there's like a toilet seat that's already cut out? Like, he's very resourceful.
Yeah. And he told us the story of how he got a lot of his first toilet seats was as a plumber. He was going to a shop, and one day he saw out back that the shop had a bunch of toilets seats that were just sitting out by the trash, and he was like, "Hey, do you mind if I take those?" And the guy inside said, "Go ahead, but take all the metal off so I can keep that for myself." And so Barney did that, and he took home the toilet seats and just started doing work. And he said that this was more of a private thing at first, and then he got into he was also a painter, so he did oil paints.
He would sell at the Riverwalk in San Antonio sometimes.
Yeah,
back in the day, he would say,
and he was doing a yard sale one day, and with that yard sale, a guy came up and said, "Oh, well, that's looking mighty fine there. That what you're doing there with that oil paints." And Barney said to him, "Oh, you want to see something else? Come into my garage." And he took this guy into his garage, and he showed him what he was doing in there. And the guy was like, "Well, you should be showing this stuff to people." And then I guess it was like a news.
It was leaked to the news, and then once one news story comes out, then the next one, and then in August 1992 is when he started the museum officially.
Okay.
Yeah. So that's when he started advertising it, inviting people in.
And I guess maybe at first, I don't remember this exactly, but I think at first he was selling some little trinkets.
Oh, right.
But then the city cracked down on
that
and
trouble.
said, you can't sell stuff. So that's why, people would come in all the time and be like, "Oh, can I buy one of those seats? I really like that seat." And Barney would be like, "No, I can't sell you anything."
Right.
But you can put a donation in the jar over there so I can get some more of my E6000, my glue I like to use. And, so yeah, he got in trouble for selling stuff. So he was no longer allowed to do that.
You can't have a continuous garage sale in Alamo Heights.
No, you have to have a permit.
Okay.
You can only do it a few times a year. So.
Yeah.
But yeah, he figured out how to get around everything. And I mean, that museum attracted people from all over the world. He took records. I think he said 80 countries. Probably
it was 82 countries the last time I remember seeing his little list.
And in the 3 years we volunteered, I probably ran tours with him. Sometimes a few times he had a fall and he couldn't come out to the museum, and so I would show it. But I mean, it was a constant stream of like really interesting people from all over the world coming out to see his museum.
Yeah.
No, so you said like it was in 92. Was that around the time when he was like on all the talk shows? Was that around that time?
I think his talk shows were around 2000.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
So I think it built up to that. And then, around 2000, he was on, I don't remember the exact dates, but he went on 3 major, 2 of them he went on and 1 came to him. Okay. So when you went to visit Barney's Smith's Toilet Seat Art Museum, at some point he would be like, "Oh, he would put on a video on a little teeny TV in the corner, and it had a repeating loop of the 3 shows. So he was on Arsenio Hall, He
it The
was
View?
on.
Was he on The View?
He
The
was on
View.
The View.
Good Morning America.
And Good Morning America. Good Morning America came to him, I believe. He wasn't actually on there.
Okay.
But the other two, he was present. He was so proud of that. Like, and actually for Arsenio Hall, he actually made 2 toilet seats and gave one. So he had identical ones. But typically, he would bring a toilet seat, make everybody sign it, and then he'd bring it back to the museum and not let them keep it.
Yeah.
And he had, and so he had different like themes, as we mentioned earlier. He had
Yes.
toilet seats were specific to. He had toilet seats that were specific to the states, where you had to sign. I remember having to sign the Vermont one. He also had ones that were based on. He also had ones that were celebrations of his wedding anniversaries.
Oh, those are beautiful.
Those were beautiful. He also did ones for birthday parties, like family birthday parties. I remember seeing some of those as well,
Sure.
right?
Yeah.
And talk to us about some of the other themed ones he did.
Well, he had his favorites and his very favorite, but
yeah. The ones that he would always show, like when you came in the door, they had the Mount St. Helens, the $1 million toilet seat, and the Space Shuttle Columbia, the piece that he had from Cape Canaveral. It washed up on the beach and it was sent to him.
That's the Challenger.
I'm sorry. Yes, the Challenger.
He had the Challenger.
But he also did a Columbia one.
He had a Columbia one for those disasters.
Yeah. And then he had the Saddam Hussein piece of a toilet out of the green zone in Baghdad. He had that on a toilet.
His neighbor brought it back for him.
Yeah.
So he really liked the seats that were like historical moments, like that. Those he was really proud to have a piece of, or a story to. He loved to show those off.
Yeah.
His earliest seats were kind of like the stuff seats. So he had like the dentist, and he had all the tools from the dentist office, or he had a whole bunch of general plumbing ones. Yeah. He loved his arrowhead ones. He's really proud of those, and he would always say like that those are worth a lot of money. Just one of those arrowheads. So those, he lived in Tennessee for a while. Those came out of Tennessee in the 50s. Yeah. The geocaching.
Right. That was a big subculture that supported him a lot.
So I think he was up to 13, 12. There was a lot of them.
Yeah.
And they were full. Like a whole bunch of people who do geocaching would come because he was a site. And then
the other one he liked to talk about was his wife had a surgery.
Oh,
yeah. And
it was he had a piece from the surgery that
it was her
the gallbladder.
Gallbladder, I think she had removed, and she actually hid that from him. He couldn't get a hold of that.
Of the actual.
He had her actual gallbladder. But
I think he had some other stuff on the.
But he had like pieces of her surgery, like utensils, and I mean,
this was so.
Yeah, and then with like the anniversary ones, he had like got the keys from like some of the hotels that they had stayed at and put those onto a toilet seat.
There was a time where he and his wife Velma, I think it was.
Yeah, Velma.
They would do all these. He was a real traveler for a while, and so he made all these beautiful scrapbooks on toilet seats of their trips, like keys to the room, or I mean, they probably were just extra keys, but he really told a lot of cool stories through his seats, and he also told the story of the local story of different volunteer groups, or like Boy Scouts and Girl Scouts that would come. Mm-hmm. He loved the Pooch Parade, which is part of Fiesta, which is a big celebration in the spring in San Antonio. So he would actually be I don't think I sent any photos, but he had he was a water stop for the dogs. Right. And he opened his museum, and he'd have all his Pooch Parade seats displayed, and the community would come by every year and say hi. And He also hosted in January a walking group that would come by, and the Roadrunners. Mm-hmm. So he was just, like, for such a weird museum, he is such a traditional family man, like in the community. He would go to church. He had his plumbing business, until he retired. He had 3 daughters.
He's a volunteer firefighter.
Oh yeah, he was a volunteer firefighter for Alamo Heights. Like, just a classic story. But his art. He always said when he was young he would redraw the comics in his bedroom. So he was always doodling and drawing his whole life. But it wasn't until he retired that he could really just full blown do it 24/7.
And one of the things he was also really proud of is he had something that his brother had done for a restaurant. It was a menu.
So his brother's an artist too.
Yeah, his brother was an artist too. And actually he also had like it was a scapula of an animal. I'm not sure what animal exactly, but his brother had done a drawing on that, which was actually pretty amazing drawing.
So like in his museum, not only were there toilet seats, there was like family archives and he also got into ceramics. So he started noticing all these like ceramic items he had made using molds, all like hidden behind the toilet seats. He was, and he taught classes, and he was just, I mean, we only knew him his last 3 years. So like, he definitely had a long, amazing life connected to the community. And so we just feel so lucky we got to spend those last 3 years around him. We literally were at the museum at least once a week for 3 years.
Well, and you had, so I mean, it's like also an inspiration when you kind of like do the math on this. 92, he was in his early 70s. Basically, he's either 71 or so. I mean, so at that point, he decides to open up a museum. At 71. Right? I mean, then if you figure it out, then you do the math. 20 years earlier is when he started doing it. So like in his early 50s, he started, really working on really kind of going. So for anybody, watching or listening to this, I mean, you never say it's never too late to it's like, it is never too late.
True. And, when we first met him at 92, he was in really good shape at that point. Like, he just lost his wife and he was a little sad, but he was getting around pretty good. I remember, not too bad, but he just had such a full, wonderful life, I think.
Right.
Yeah. One of the stories he liked to tell also was his wife told him that he needs to stop at 500. And he never stopped at 500. He promised that he would, but he didn't end up doing it. He kept going.
I mean, he always said,
there's the Saddam Hussein toilet seat that you got up right there. That's the little part of the toilet seat out of the green zone in Baghdad.
Right.
Yeah.
I mean, he always said his wife knew where he was in his toilet seat museum. So like,
yeah. Like, she didn't like that he did it, but she always knew where he was. Yeah.
I mean, we never got to meet her or talk to her at the, but he sure loved his wife. He missed her so much and never stopped talking about her.
Yeah.
But I think they were married over 60 years, if I remember.
A long time.
Yeah, 68, I think.
Was it? I'm trying to remember the toilet seat art he did for every anniversary.
Offhand, I don't remember, but it was a long time.
Yeah. He would always ask me if I was going to get to that number in my marriage, but
I mean, we got married at like you just early
before I turned 40. So
no, you just turned 40.
We met at I was 39.
Oh yeah,
I turned 40 right after we met. So
so we're not going to make it that many years, I don't think. But
Not as many as Barney did.
I mean, I think that the thing we really also enjoyed about him is he could find a reuse for anything. He didn't throw anything out.
Oh yeah.
He kept things in shoe boxes, all organized. I don't know. I've always really admired that in artists who reuse and create with what's there. And so I always found that just delightful. And yeah, it was really inspiring. And in fact, before moving from San Antonio, I did an art show where I had collected a bunch of, I was cleaning up some trash on the streets and saving some different stuff. And so I had an art show of using the Barney style of the E6000 glue that I learned from him, and took my own try at being like a junk artist. But
yeah. Hey folks, I just wanted to take a quick break and say thank you so much for listening and watching Storycomic Presents, where we interview amazing storytellers and artists. If you can, please subscribe. If you can, hit the like button. If you can, go ahead and leave a review on your favorite podcast app that you might be listening to this on. And remember, always support local artists, support local writers, support independent creators. It sure does mean a lot to them. And we will be here at Storycomic to make sure that their voices are being heard. Thank you. So what would you say is like an advice that he gave you, either both of you as either as artists or creators themselves on that?
Yeah, I mean, for me, he just gave me so much knowledge of just not only art. I mean, and I do a little bit of art myself. I actually have a piece up in the Barney Smith Toilet Seat Art Museum. And I did a little piece for his 96th birthday of just a little wood burning that I do.
Which you put on a toilet seat.
But Barney put it on the toilet seat, and he was so happy that I had done that for him. And yeah, I mean, he was such an inspiration, because I mean, even though he was in so much pain, every day he would get up and he would face the day like it was a pleasure to be there, and just he didn't let the pains and aches of everyday life get in his way. He was going to do what he was going to do. And yeah. Carrie.
Yeah, I mean, he welcomed everybody to his museum. Like he was just a good neighbor, and just, I don't know. He was really creative, and I always felt like he was a kindred spirit for me. So like I just kind of understood I laughed because I had the bathtub art museum, and so then I moved to San Antonio, and I'm like, oh, there could be the toilet seat, because it's funny that I do bathtub art and he does toilet art, so it's like art related to these two parts of your bathroom, right? And so I wanted to do a bathtub art garden. So I was like, oh, there could be the toilet seat art museum and then the bathtub art garden outside, right? Perfect. But like, I didn't even bring it up to him, because as long as Barney was around, it was the Barney Smith show. Like there was no room for bathtub art museum. It was all toilet seats. That was fine. Like he was just so interesting and a little Energizer bunny. Like really, I would go hang out with him and help him open and close the museum, go home. And the next day he would have like drawings for his next toilet seat that he was working on. Like he was always working on new work.
Right.
Always planning. And even when like he found a buyer for his museum, he planned all that out. He was drawing like how it was going to be packed. And he was like, he figured out the banana boxes, the toilet seats fit in perfectly. He's got everybody he knows gathering banana boxes for him. And in some ways he made life easy, because he just knew exactly how he wanted it and how to do it. And yep, there's the museum packed up with banana boxes. Like some of those boxes have only one toilet seat because it was like 3D, and then other ones have, I don't know, like 10. I think you could get up to 10 in a box. So I got the interesting job to document every single toilet seat. So, when I was just, a volunteer helper when the toilet seat museum was open normally, there's no way I saw all of them. But every time I go in, I would see something new because there's just so many.
Right.
Well, as we had to pack it up, and he actually had a lot of neighbors help. Like I didn't end up doing as much packing as other people, but what I did was photograph every single toilet seat for him because he's about to send his life's work away to some other people. He wanted to have the pictures to remember his art. And so I took each seat out and I photographed it. And then I put them on a picture sheet for him about what was in each box. And so, he only got to enjoy that book a short while, but I actually have the entire archive of toilet seats on my computer. So and I've seen them all. So in that way, I'm quite the expert of his life's work because I have an image of every single one because of that project. It was a lot of work, I'll tell you, like a lot of work to photograph them all. But I was like, I am down with that because how often do you get to like see the entire work of a folk artist like that? It was, an exciting, like he needed the help and I was glad to do it.
Right. Well, this is like the perfect image of Barney Smith here we're looking at, where he's wearing his apron and he has his cordless phone in that front pocket. So he was the Barney Smith Museum, like in the sense, I remember when I called thinking it was a museum. It was when I called to, hey, can I come to the museum?
It was by appointment,
and it was him picking up the phone. You're talking to Barney Smith.
Yep.
Like he's like, yeah, come on over. I'll open up the garage for you. I'm like, okay.
Yep, that's exactly how it was. And we would always laugh because he still had a landline, he would get a lot of telemarketer calls. And he was hilarious because they'd be trying to call and sell him something, and then he'd be selling them his toilet seat museum. He'd be like, oh, you got to come see my toilet. And they'd eventually have to hang up on him because you didn't, It was pretty great to listen to him on the phone talking to people. And what was he didn't want anyone to miss it, so he would do his best to open it up for you. If he could, and he loved meeting people, talking to people, and telling people about his art. He loved it so much.
What did he say every time you wanted to take a picture with him? You'd always want to say what, toilet seat or pot?
Yeah, you had to say toilet seat.
Yeah.
1, 2, 3.
Toilet seat.
It makes you smile better.
Yeah.
And then he had his most favorite toilet seat. You want to talk about that?
No.
Oh no. So he liked the so in grade school, I think it was, or was it 5th grade?
Yep.
So you remember better than me. He had to recite a poem by Rudyard Kipling.
Rudyard Kipling.
Oh, Roger Kipling.
Yeah.
And
it was called Earth's Last Picture.
I mean, we should know this.
Yeah, I know.
Well, no. When Earth's last picture was painted.
Yes.
And so, I mean, he'd be mad that we messed that up.
Yeah.
Because we listened to him repeat that so long. But so he had a toilet seat with the poem and like an old paint set, but you couldn't even read the poem anymore. It was all like scrubbed away. And he would recite this poem to his visitors as kind of the last stop of the tour. And man, I never got tired of that. People just were like, it just was such a cool moment because he would pretend like he didn't, it was like some other kid did it. And at the end, he would share that it was him.
Yeah.
He just had
I've been living with this person for 97 years.
It's on the internet. Just,
you
need to watch him recite his poem. when Earth's Last Picture was painted.
That's right.
So yeah, Google that and Barney Smith. Many people posted that on YouTube, but so yeah, that was fun.
Yeah.
That's amazing. 1,400, over 1,400 toilet seats. When I asked him if I could do one, he was very specific on the type of toilet seat.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Yeah, he was like, it has to be this. You have to make sure there's no metal, please. Like, he was very specific on how to do it, and he preferred. I think he preferred the ones that were more oval shaped and circular shaped, and yeah, he went.
He loved the toilet seat you made. It was just so fun, like from Barney Smith to Barney Smith. Like,
yeah. No, it was a genuine pleasure just to be able to, and it's funny because it's almost to the point where it's like as we were talking about before we went on the air, like he'll always be the most famous Barney Smith. Like, he just has so much, and I think there's another one, like there's a senator, or there's another Barney Smith out there someplace, but but as you said, like, it was so talk to us a bit about the the process of how involved was he in the shifting over to the truck yard colony on that. So
what was the question?
The truck yard, the truck yard, was it the truck yard?
Yeah. So I think he got the offer sometime in 2017. So we came on board as volunteers in 2016.
Right.
And sometime in 2017, he suddenly announced he was feeling too old to run the museum anymore, and he wanted to sell it.
Right.
And I think it took about a year till he got that offer, and it literally was about to go to Eastland, Texas. They were going to try to figure out something there for it. But then, he was completely involved in that. Like, right. It was not, I did a lot of letter writing and local kind of campaigns on my own, trying to talk it up. Like, hey, San Antonio, we need to save this. I reached out to, at the time I was still pretty new in town and didn't have a huge connection, but I did my best to reach out. I was there for a lot of newscasts, and I always talked it up like, hey, this is a treasure we need to save. But like I said, like, people wanted 5 or 6 seats. They didn't want 1,400. And so just nobody in San Antonio, there just wasn't a place at the time for it, or the right people to take it on. Like, I thought about trying to do it, but it was a lot of work, and I needed like a whole group of people, and I just wasn't finding it.
Right.
And Barney, he wasn't so interested in having a legacy in San Antonio as much as he just wanted to sell it and make some money for his family. And so, that happens sometimes to kind of genius artists. They don't really think of themselves as needing a legacy. But the rest of us think, no, everybody needs to know that you were on this earth and what you did. But for him, he was, at times humble, even though he was very proud, of course, of what he had done. But he didn't want to like be that person, I guess. And so, but he, luckily the truck yard stepped in. Like, it is not in San Antonio, but it preserves his work. And they did such a nice job. They really did. And, we're so happy for Barney that he got to actually go to the
grand opening.
The grand opening, which is a friends and family event in that was June of 2019. And he cut the ribbon, and walked in and was the first person in his own museum. Like, it was a very special moment that I'll never forget. Like,
right.
Yeah.
So we're so happy that happened. Yeah, the nice little entryway with all his memorabilia. So, that's the thing. It's like, it's really hard to preserve art like this and find a place. And sometimes it takes like a business venture. Like, I think that's kind of a new way to save art sometimes. You know, they decided this was an attraction worth building up, you know, building a building for.
Right.
And they use it as like a performance space and other things. Like, it has many purposes, but
Well, it's interesting, and if you think about it from the perspective of that, basically they bought over 1,400 pieces of fine art from a famous artist. I
they
mean,
did.
you know, it's like you talk about legacy, like any other artist would. I mean, and it's good for him to say, no, I want this all to be one collection.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
So I mean, it's like other
He
famous
recognized
artists.
the value of it together versus
Right.
pulled apart, because for him, I mean, like Jason told the story in the beginning, he was selling art, and then because of the rules, he couldn't sell it out of his garage. So then he's like, oh, it's not for sale. So
Right.
it was never for sale until it was for sale. And
Right.
when it was everything. And, you know, as an artist, to be able to be in charge of your art to the very end is awesome. Because a lot of times, you know, you hear the stories of so-and-so never sold their art till they died, or never was worth anything till later. And
Right.
he got to see his worth and see his legacy before he died.
Right.
And that's meant a lot, because we always were like, what if he passes away during all of this? Because, you know, he actually was in rehab a few times for falls. Like, anything could have happened. But, you know, literally 1 month after that opening is when he laid his hands down for the last time, you know, and was done and passed away. And so it's sad that he had to go. We were very sad and miss him greatly, but it was time. And it's one of those stories that feels complete and not just ending weirdly in the middle. So yeah, he's he I don't know. It's just like we have this kind of like daily experience with him, because we would just, you know, we were in the thick of it with him. We just showed up and gave him the muscle when he needed it. I was fixing toilet seats till the collection moved, because a lot of things had dropped off over the years and were on the floor that we would find as we were cleaning up. And so, you know, as someone who's an artist myself and very interested in art history and preserving stuff and legacies, and it was such a pleasure to be right in there and be a part with the artist himself. You know, like I always love, so he would use communion cups he would save, and he'd melt them down for his resin to put over his toilet seats. Like, that's the kind of weird stuff like I would learn. Like, he just had all these like weird little tricks. He was very self-taught, you know, of course, but he also admired other artists. Like he liked watching what's that artist with the TV show?
Bob Ross.
Bob Ross.
Yeah.
We watched an episode of Bob Ross together. So he, you know, and he was very involved with I think art societies and little local art clubs back in the day. Like I said, I wasn't really around during that time, but you know, I would find like keepsakes and stuff from that time period. And I mean, what a layered life. He like a true artist and an artist to the end. And you know, today anyone can go see his art today, and that's just incredible.
Right. So if people want to learn, just kind of like, you know, learn more about Barney Smith's the Toilet Seat Art Museum, would the Truckyard Colony, would that be the best place?
Well, you want to see the art in person if you can.
Right.
It's very physical. I sometime in the middle, I started a Facebook page called the Friends of BES, which stands for his initials, which he would sign his artwork BES a lot. And so you can actually dig through and see the end days of the museum on that Facebook group.
Okay. And we'll add a link to that Facebook group.
Okay. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
And I mean, he's on YouTube. He's so interesting that lots of people documented him. So if you dig around, you can find different ways he was, people's stories about meeting him and all that. But
Right. Okay. Yeah, he's and yeah, so we'll do is so we'll have the link to see the as you mentioned, definitely see it in person. It's one of those things where you can get you a bit. It's delightfully overwhelming to see 1,400 pieces of toilet seat art surrounding you. Yeah, and also, as you say, we got the Facebook group that you're the admin of that has, I think you got a couple hundred people in there now, right?
Yeah, and then if people can always post stories, the whole point of it is like I did the Facebook group because I wanted to catalog what was happening at the museum at the time, because he had a Facebook page run by his family, but they weren't in San Antonio at the museum. They were in another part of the state. And so they weren't able to document it the way Jason and I could because we were there. So yeah, you get a lot of if you're really interested, you get the more side stories of his life at the end. And it's just the unique story of what happens when an artist is getting old and is going to pass away soon. What happens to their art? So it's really kind of a bigger story.
Right.
And we had no idea what we were getting ourselves into when it all happened. We just thought at first, oh, this is kind of fun volunteer work, but it actually kind of overtook our lives for a few years too. I mean, there was weeks where we're like, oh boy, what have we done? But we just kept coming back because we knew how important it was. And I do feel like there was some reason we came to San Antonio was to help him. Like it just was kind of like we were needed and we were there, and I don't know what else to say about it, but it was just kind of came together, and I guess he needed us and we needed him. Right. And we were it's kind of unusual to have some random strangers show up at the end of an artist's life, because usually it's like family or long-term friends, and of course those people are around as well, but they'd known about the museum for years. Like it wasn't like a fresh thing to them. Right. And so for us, it was interesting and fresh, and we wanted to be there all the time. And we realized that the time was disappearing. Like it wasn't going to be long before. I would walk in that museum. I took a lot of videos of actually walking through it because I was like, there's a time, I don't know when it's going to be, that no one's going to be able to do this anymore. Right. And I want to record this museum as it was. It's still amazing to see, but it's in a different phase now. And I think if I had gone to the colony to eat some food and have some beer and happen upon the museum today, I would be blown away not knowing anything else. Like it's definitely worth the detour. Like, yeah, even if it takes you like 5 hours out of your way, go. Right. But to actually have gotten to know Barney himself is something that I will never forget.
Yeah. Right. No, that's the best part of it. And like he always said at the end, he would say, just like kinfolk coming to see me.
One of his catchphrases.
Yeah.
Yeah. And like, yeah, we didn't get to talk about it, but like something we got to do for him, like just being at the museum is so his house his house and museum were in the same plot of land, but they're not attached. And he had a little walk space between the two. And he would use a little walker, but he was starting to get really wobbly. And it was getting a little worrisome of him being by himself, trying to get from his back door to the back door of the museum. And so he had all this bamboo.
Yeah. Well, and with that, then he had me build railings for him.
So we
get him out there.
Actually, I didn't build them. I was there, but yeah.
But he directed the whole thing. Like, this is how you do it, and if you weren't following the way he did it, he'd say, hey, you should do it this way. And so,
because he was really good. If he got a little wobble, he could grab onto something in the museum because there's lots of stuff. But when he was out in his yard without anything, it was really dangerous. So that was a project we helped. We had a couple museum fans came and helped, and we made a whole day of it. And it was stuff like that. It was just it happened organically. We just saw a need, and we're like, we got to do something. And so.
Well, thank you very much, Carrie and Jason. This is it's been a pleasure to just talk to you and hear some more stories about Barney Smith and that. And as you said, it's an honor to know that his legacy is intact, and it's and there's a place that people can go and see that.
Yeah.
It's not the same as going into his garage, but it's still. And then
for some people they prefer it because they're like, oh, I can actually see the art. Like it was a little overwhelming in the little teeny garage for some people.
Right. Yeah.
So in some ways it could be an even better way to see his art. But he's he's a Texas treasure, and I mean an American artist treasure,
Good. Well, thank you very much. I appreciate it.
Yeah, thank you.